Well, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, same. I'm excited. Thanks
Yeah,
for
me
having
too.
me.
So I love the angle of the coaching, the writing, the speaking, the songwriting. Before we get to all of that, I want to know surviving this pandemic affected everything that we did, and I'm certain with what you're doing, it threw everything into a tailspin. How much of living through the pandemic and adjusting to that time period has reverberated into what you do now?
Yeah, I'm actually one of the fortunate ones. We started a program called Pathway to Hope, which actually helps people get out of toxic relationships. And I think the pandemic, because you were so like, you could not leave, exposed a lot relationally with people. And they're like, I don't think my relationship is good as I thought it was. And
Yeah.
so we actually launched a business at that time and it was doing really well. Sad that it was doing well, that there's so many people struggling in their relationships. But for me, it was nice in that way. I mean, we connected with a lot of people online more than we ever have, and we, as in me and my partner.
Yeah.
And then it also gave me opportunities just to kind of like hang in and write and, kind of get more internal and what do I want? How do I want to be creative? So, there was a positive note for me in that way.
Yeah.
There was a negative, I think, for my kids. It was hard to see them go to school and feel like suffocated with a mask on and then constantly be told, like, put your mask on, put your mask on. So I know everyone has different beliefs on it, but for like a child who's like in elementary school, it was really difficult on them. And they didn't feel very seen
Hmm.
in school. They felt like you were supposed to just obey and follow these things. And that wasn't a very free environment for them. And
Yeah.
it was more like fear-based, I guess it
Uh-huh.
felt like. So it was hard. It was really hard on them. So it was hard on me as a mom to watch them go through that. I mean, I've never went through something like this. I didn't
Yeah.
know how to relate. So, but I know you've asked this with lots of your people you have on
Yeah.
your shows, but I don't think I've ever heard like your perspective on that. Like, how did it like affect you? Because you're in the music business too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I got out with my kids. My kids at that time were in their teen years. My stepdaughter Jilly is, she's pretty advanced for her age. My son Miles is on the autism spectrum. So there were two separate places.
wow.
But what I decided to do, my day job, I'm an essential worker for a school district. I do IT work. So I was going
Oh,
into work, but I also really ramped up my interviews. I had a moment of clarity one morning listening to a jazz station. And I was like, I have to do something during this time to just make it all make sense. So I'm going to do more interviews. And I would do them with the kids. And the jazz community was overwhelmingly positive. So it was really good to and then I was going out to parks, constantly going out and seeing the world, you know. And it was like that's how we made it through it. I remember at the end of that year, I always do little podcasts with my son about the year and we wrap it up. And I couldn't believe how much he saw 2020 as a triumphant year. So it was like the time period was crazy and everything you're talking about, the kids, the social, emotional, and all of that. But there just was something off about all of it. The whole thing didn't make sense. So you mask up, you totally clamp down going into a restaurant, but then you take it off and you're breathing everywhere, food particles and everything. Then you put it back on and leave. There's so many discrepancies, so many ironic, weird things. It was like, what is going on here? And it's not conspiratorial, it's scientifically illogical. And it was like, what is happening? And then
yeah.
these poor kids, working in a school district, they just literally had no outlets at all.
Wow.
And we had mileage on our odometer, you know,
Mm,
but they
hmm
didn't. So we could deal with
mm,
it a little bit more.
good point.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't know you worked in a school district. That's very interesting. So you have that perspective and you saw the kids kind of go through
Yeah.
that. Some of the kids, enjoyed it. It gave them an excuse to really kind of hide and they felt
Uh-huh.
more confident in that way. And I did see
Yeah.
that, but that was the rarity.
Yeah.
For my kids who are outgoing and, want to be free. And they were at a young age, I want to say like third and fifth grade or something. Like
Yeah.
it was young for them.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm in the west side, so
Sure.
it was very strict, very, very strict.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did get away, and we're one of those people that did get out during that time and didn't let the fear kind of take us over. And I know people have different views on that, but that's what our guests were saying. And we had some great experiences in the South, and the contrast was like night and day. Like
Uh-huh.
I just could not believe it. So it was kind of nice to get different people's perspectives and just
Yep.
hear conversations and but also talk about different things.
Yeah.
Like some people were just like all they would talk about. And I'm like, so, but like, how are you really? Like,
Yeah.
what kind
That's
of
it.
hobbies are you doing? You know,
Uh-huh.
wanted to know about them more than the conspiracy or
Yeah.
whatever their thoughts were on it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
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 It got exhaustive after a while. I mean, even looking at the news
Great
feed, it
word.
was like every morning was almost a level of dread. Like what weird thing? Because it wasn't just that we had a pandemic. In America, we had George Floyd, we had a class war, we had a race war, we had all these things. Like America is really good about not just letting a fire get put out. We have to throw a can of aerosol, we have to throw gas, we have to do this and make it an inferno. And it's like that's just the way we are. And the rest of the world has to be looking at us like, what is going on? Can you just deal with the virus right now? But anyway, it was
Good
weird.
point.
It was
Good
very
point.
weird. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that's going on in your life, but I want
Yeah.
to get to the heart and soul of it. And to do that, I always like to ask if you were to be put in front of a bunch of grade school kids, 10 or
Mm.
11-year-olds, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you
Yeah.
answer?
I would say, well, I'm an accidental award-winning singer-songwriter. And they're going to be like, accidental. And then hopefully that will open up a really great story to share about my story and how I didn't know I could sing or write music. And because I didn't grow up in a healthy environment, I didn't have great parents who saw me and validated me and encouraged me to pursue things that I love to do. And I know that there's a lot of kids in the school system that are in the same boat. School was a safe place for me. That was the place I got to kind of be creative and feel seen by teachers and things like that. And so I would hope it would like really open up like that conversation. And I would love to hear about like their passions and their gifts and what holds them back from exploring that a little bit more. And then maybe even talking to leadership about that. Like, have you noticed things about certain kids and what could we do to like help bring that more to the surface kind of
Yeah.
things.
So
That's
what
what I
did
would tell the grade school kids for sure.
totally. So what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream?
Teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
how did this accidental career, award-winning singer-songwriter, how did it happen?
Yeah, I've always loved to sing. I would do it alone. Like, a lot of us sing in the shower or sing in the car. But I had friends and they would every once in a while hear me sing, in my car or something and be like, Amber, like you have a really good voice. And I'll be like, oh, thanks, whatever. I had a hard time taking compliments in back then, but and so yeah, I mean, I always loved it, but I didn't know that I actually could, and I wasn't able to really let in the validation that I was getting. I had a season where I was really involved in the church, and I took a class on how to lead worship, and that's where I kind of learned how to play guitar and sing songs and things like that. My brother-in-law at the time was a pastor, and he came up to me one time night before Sunday and said, "Hey, Amber, like I have nobody to lead tomorrow, music." And granted, I have never even sang on a mic, just in my class and by myself, okay? Learning guitar, I probably know three chords, which, by the way, church music, that's like all you need. Jazz, probably not so much.
Right.
So, long story short, I was scared out of my mind, but I said, I mean, I didn't feel like I had an option. He's my brother-in-law. I got to help him out. So I said, I know four songs. Sure, I'll
Yeah.
do it. And he goes, well, I have this other guy that plays percussion. He's going to play with you. Never played with the drummer. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, way to add more fear to me. But anyways, I remember just that morning, I stayed up really late practicing the songs and it was really in my head. I had a lot of anxiety. I've always had fear of speaking and playing in front of people, even in school. Like my face will probably turn red every once in a while, even in this interview. It's just I have a hard time like sharing about myself. And speeches were really hard growing up too. So the next morning, I am with the sound guy getting ready to go up there, and I'm literally like in tears. And he doesn't even know what to do with this. He's just kind of like looking at me like, and I'm like, it's just so much fear and like emotion. And I'm like in my head, like, this is going to be such a crap show. Like, what am I doing? I should have never said yes. So, long story short, I get up there, I do my thing. That poor percussionist, I don't, he basically just followed me. Like, I didn't even know what tempo was at that point or like how to, follow his lead and things like that. My 13-year-old is now a drummer, which is the irony, and that is hilarious. But anyways, I got through it, thought it was horrible, and literally I had like a line of people coming up to me and they were so moved. And some of them were like tearing up and they're like, "Are you gonna like lead again?" Because that was really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like shocked because what was going on inside of me was just a hot mess from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Sure.
But what came across to other people was like just like heartfelt, like authenticity. And so that's how I started. I'm
Yeah.
no longer like a worship leader. Could I do it? I could. I definitely could. I'm not really involved in that world as much as I used to be.
Yeah.
But my friend one time, a good friend who loves music, encouraged me to start writing my own songs. Have you ever thought about doing that, Amber? And I said no. And so I wrote him a song and it was kind of churchy. And he goes, "No, I mean like write a song. Like this is worship music."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, long story short, I did. I started doing that and just kind of sitting with my internal world and seeing what would come out. And I had a couple dreams where, for the first time in my life, I experienced what it had been like to be loved by a dad. Like, I didn't grow up with a dad.
Yeah.
And those dreams just rocked my world. I didn't realize what I missed out on having that contrast. And so, in a lot of ways, I wrote to save my life. And that pain was so intense, I didn't know what to do with it. And so after those dreams, I wrote a song called A Girl's First Love, which ended up winning an award and
Yeah.
has since then inspired not just people who have been abandoned by a parent, but fathers.
Yeah.
Like, I've had fathers come up to me crying and been like, "Thank you so much for sharing." And like, I travel a lot and now I'm like reconsidering like getting a better job where I can be around my kids more. Like your
Yeah.
song just really like it moved me. So
That's
that's
wonderful.
that's the story, yeah.
That's a great story. So what was the first live show that you ever saw that moved you?
Hmm.
Or one that was very memorable that you remember that was wonderful?
Johnny Lang,
Okay. Yeah.
amazing. He came here locally and like I've listened to his stuff before, like just as his songs and things like that, but I've never seen him live. Oh my gosh. Like there's people where they play music and then
Yeah.
there's people where like the music literally plays them. And I
Yeah.
think with Johnny Lang, like it's just like you're in the experience with him and whatever's going on there. And I think people feel that with me too, in a different way, of course. But yeah. What about
It's
you?
the first one, well, I saw probably the first one is I saw Kiss when the only tour they did without makeup. It was called Animalize, and that was that was wild. And then I saw Motley Crue shortly thereafter in like '86. That was crazy. And I don't know what.
Wow.
I mean, that was a different era. That was the '80s. So my folks dropped me off with a
Yeah.
friend, and they were shooting fireworks off in there. I mean, Nikki Sixx was tripping people on stage. They were going crazy. There was bottles of booze flying everywhere. I mean, it was intense.
Probably not safe for a kid, but it was way fun for you.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we were up there
Yeah.
doing air guitar. We were way up in the rafters doing it, and it was wild. But the weird thing about Johnny Lang is that anytime there's a young prodigy that is in the world of blues, it's like it always goes to Robert Johnson. Like how
Uh,
much did he sell his soul to the devil for? Like how did we get here? You know what I'm saying? That I
oh, for
remember that with
sure.
him. Like he
Yeah.
was the chosen one, and everybody was kind of drawing parallels to Robert Johnson and that whole world. So it was wild. But
Hmm.
I wonder how
Hmm.
old he is now. I mean, he's like an old soul now. I mean, he's been doing it for so long.
Yeah, I know he canceled his tour. I think he had something, going on with his vocals. Like he can't really sing like he used to
Oh
anymore.
wow.
I follow his wife on Instagram. She's hilarious, by the
Yeah.
way. I don't know if
Yeah.
you follow her, but
Uh,
they have a ton of kids and very family oriented. It's just fun to watch that side of
yeah.
him and yeah, his
That's cool.
family.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'll have to do that. I'll have to follow her. So let me ask
I
you
think it's
this.
called Ranting Housewives.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look it up. Yeah, totally. Totally.
This
I
is a
love it.
hilarious name, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Who's been an inspiration for you? I mean, I know you talked about growing up and it being difficult, but who has been that bedrock for you in your life that's inspired you to evolve into who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a book. It's called The Girl's First Love, and it's the story behind the song. I realized that when I was sharing these stories with people, they would like be moved by it. And I thought, I need to like capture these little short stories and moments of how music is really, my music specifically, this song has really affected people. And so, in this book, I actually dedicated it to three guys. I have it right here. So, and I said, I dedicate this book to a few caring, safe men who aided in the healing of my wound of being abandoned by my father. Ken, Chris, and Pat, thank you for seeing me, validating me, loving me, and supporting my gifts.
Yeah.
So these guys all came in different times of my life, and they all offered something, unique in regards to writing and music. And they just really lovingly pushed me, but also like gave me a hug when I was a wreck. I
Yeah.
was so scared. So, anyways, those would be the three guys.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. So, if you can meet somebody out there, whether it's in music or otherwise, that you find inspiring, that would help you on your path, who would you love to
Ooh.
meet? Anybody on the planet?
Goodness, you got some good questions here,
Thank you.
Joe.
Thank
Making me
you.
think.
Yes. Waking up.
My music side of my head. I don't get to do that very often. Who would Adele.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'd love to see her live too. I missed that whole Vegas thing she was, but just the way she writes from such authenticity. And she's got this voice that's like so emotional, but it's not
Mhm.
like pop Mariah Carey, like high. I don't,
Yeah.
it's kind of similar to my vocals a little bit.
Yeah.
She's inspiring to me in that way. And yeah, and she shares a lot of her journey, which is part of my songwriting too.
Yeah.
What about
For sure.
you?
Oh man, I would love to meet Bill Clinton. I think he'd be fascinating from a musician's perspective, from just overall. I actually saw a speech by him in 2004. He came to the Harry S. Truman Museum, and I'd never, ever witnessed anybody literally change the particles in the room like that, like as quickly as he did. And I still remember everything he talked about in that speech. Like it's 20 years
Mm,
ago, 21 years ago now.
wow.
It's wild. So, but as far as like a musician, um, the great thing about doing jazz radio is the jazz musicians, especially the higher up you go, they're the most amazing, gentle, wondrous
Mm,
creatures on the planet. So I've been so fortunate to be able to interview and to kind of tap into that, you know?
yeah.
And it's a different vibe. I was interviewing someone earlier on today and they were talking about how jazz musicians don't put pretense on when they're on stage. And the older you get, the cooler you are. Your cool credibility goes up. So when you see Sonny Rollins at this age, which he's not playing anymore, but when he did, it was just like that Sonny's cool. He epitomizes it. Or any of the elders. But it's different with rock and roll. When they get older, like when Loverboy goes back out on reunion tour or Quiet Riot, you're like, yeah, man, that was a rough time in your life. I can see it. Those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And then
Yeah.
there's just this veneer they have, this cool or this kind of painful Nirvana-ish anxiety that you have to put on as a part of your entertainment ticket. But jazz musicians don't do that. They just go up and
Yeah.
they're sharing this thing. I don't ever see that, which is why it's so cool. So, in a
That's a great
roundabout way, that's
perspective.
my
I've never
answer.
thought about that, but I it resonates. I
Yeah.
think you're onto something here. I agree with you.
This was another guy that brought it up, and it totally came to mind. Like, for instance,
Yeah.
Mick Jagger's totally hip, and the older he gets, it's like this guy's flying around doing pirouettes on stage. He's in his 80s. I mean, the whole band is like a monolith of cool, even though they're older. But when you look at Motley Crue and Vince Neil, you're like, man, what happened? Right? Especially
See, I grew
Vince.
up in like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys
Yeah,
time, and
right.
yeah, and sometimes like Hot Wings, I think they were on it. The Backstreet Boys were on, and I was like what again? Like what happened?
Yeah, right. So are you
Uh-huh.
talking about the hot ones, the one where they eat the hot sauce? Is that what you're talking about? You said hot
Yes.
wing. Yeah.
Oh,
So
yes, hot ones. Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So my stepdaughter got me hooked on that. So we all get together and watch it. And the only person that didn't have a reaction, and I swear to this day I have a theory why, was Harry Potter. Daniel Radcliffe literally went through all of it and was totally fine. And I kept telling my wife and stepdaughter he had to have had COVID because it was remote. I'm like, his
Oh.
taste buds must have been just gone. I had never seen anyone. Like, I remember Gordon Ramsay did it, and he's the
Yeah.
culinary guy. He had
Yeah.
milks and weird lemon
Saw that one
concoctions.
too.
He was dying, you
Yeah. Well,
know?
he Also, Joe, he's Harry Potter. It could have been a magical
It's
thing.
what I'm saying. The Patronus, there was this whole thing that went, right? That's the other side note. But yeah, that's a great show. So let me ask you this: in all of these endeavors that you're a part of, what is it that gets you up every day? What is it that motivates you, that makes you create and be the best version of you every day and evolve as a
Um,
human being?
People like you, like people who love to connect and tell stories and connect with other people. And I love hearing other people's stories. That's why I like asking about you too.
Yeah,
It's
right on.
fun
Yeah, and I
to
love it.
learn both ways. Conversations, the connection, my kids, which is also a form of connection too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So let me ask you this. Of all the one thing about human growth is that we have to risk. There's all kinds of risks that we take in our life. What's the biggest risk that you've ever taken?
Besides having children,
Right.
it was a
Yes.
big risk, I
Yes.
felt like. I think taking that song to that conference, Girls First Love, knowing that it was a Christian-based kind of conference, pretty big,
Yeah.
and that everyone would be bringing worship songs, and I knew this was not that. And I didn't just bring a recording, I didn't have one. I played it live in front
Yeah.
of everybody, and I was one of the only people that did that. And the fact that I was just absolutely terrified to do that, but then a judge stood up and she applauded me and said in her southern accent, y'all are copying each other. This right here is authenticity. And then they used me as an example to the entire conference on how to write from a place. When you write for you, you write for many. And I love that line. That's something I've always kind of like held on to. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people try to write for other people or they have to sometimes in these labels situations, as you probably know. But where I found success in is like just getting, I had to write that song for myself. Like I
Sure.
needed that. And even now it's like 10 years later, I'll play it in front of people. I just don't know. Sometimes the emotion will come up still.
Yeah.
And people connect with that too. So I think that was one of the biggest risks I ever took and
Yeah.
getting to connect with the artists that were there who some of them have won Grammys, some of them have number one hits on the radio. And I'm sitting in this green room with them before getting on the stage and never even done an open mic. Like I just was blew my mind, and it's a little bit of a blur still. Like I think I just like shut down just to
Yeah.
survive, and I'm glad they caught it on video because I have it on my YouTube channel now, but it's cool to watch back and see how much I've grown and as I'm
Yeah.
there sharing my story and playing that song on stage in
Yeah.
front of like 1,000 people. It was a big crowd for me.
Yeah.
That's a
Sure.
big crowd. Yeah.
Sure. That's amazing. Yeah, one of my favorite people on the planet, he's a good friend of mine. His name is Phil Schlatter. He was in a Christian rock band in the 90s called Dig Jesus. And they were
Cool.
huge, huge. And he used to talk about festivals because he got into a band with friends of mine in our 20s and they almost made it really big. It was called the Daybirds and they were a local band here in Kansas
Nice.
City. But yeah, he used to talk about how they were like the Beatles. I mean, they were like in that world of Christian music. They would go to
Yeah.
festivals and people would just freak out. And it was just
Oh
a
yeah.
totally, he was just explain how that world was totally different, but it was very akin to a lot of levels of the music industry. I mean, they didn't make any
Absolutely.
money off their albums, the record, that kind
Right.
of travesty that goes into making
Yeah.
money and making a living in music.
So, besides a music fan, do you play instruments? Are you a musician?
I play the drums a little bit, but I haven't done it for a long time. I mean, I would fiddle on it and I got to a point where I could get the rhythm down, but this is the thing. This is one of my paintings. So I paint, I write,
Oh, great.
and I do the podcast thing. There's all these things that I've immersed myself in that I consider, if you take it seriously, to be difficult vocations. I just want music to be a mystery. At one point I got a guitar for
Mhm.
Christmas and I wanted to get in there, but I'm like, there's something that's totally wondrous and romantic about it being a complete mystery. I don't want to know how to read music. I don't want to go into a show thinking they got to tweak that speaker or that feedback's off. You know what I'm saying? Because when I would listen to my
You
friends,
want to be a little naive when you walk in there and just let in the
Forrest
goodness,
Gump,
the energy.
cerebral,
Yeah.
totally. Just let it
Yeah.
wash over me the way it should, because they would get off stage and be like, man, the sound was this, the sound was that, or this, that, and the other. And I think that's a part of me in my interviews with musicians. I just want to get to what was it that made you love this and the
Yeah.
feeling. Because at the end of the day, even if you know music and know how to read, like you're good with reading charts, it's still a feeling. It's still
Mm.
this thing that I just want it to remain. I don't want to get into the science of it, you
I
know?
like that. And I can say I'm a musician now and a songwriter. That's really not the thing for me. Like I just love connecting with people,
Yeah.
and music is a crazy, powerful, amazing way of doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'm also a coach, so it's like I can have 2 or 3 sessions with somebody and they'll start opening up, which is great. It takes time to build rapport. I'll play one song and they are coming up to me bearing their souls,
Yeah.
like, here's my story.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much. And so that's really what's motivated me. I do have friends that literally, I was just watching one of them play last weekend and he had a 2 hour set. There's a lot of people there. It was awesome. He played for an hour extra and didn't even realize it.
Wow.
And I'm like, I would be counting down the
Uh-huh.
time, like,
Uh-huh.
because that's not my thing. I will do it,
Yeah.
but it's not like I don't have to do it. Like people, they have to do it. They just love it so much.
Yep.
And I appreciate that about them, but they also aren't the ones to stay after and talk to people.
Right.
They're
Right.
like breaking down the sound and getting out of
Yeah,
there.
they're out.
They don't do what I do, which is like I'll play for an hour or I'll share a story in a song, and then I love hanging out with people. So it's very different. It's a little unique, like what I'm doing in that way. And
Yeah.
I've been able to really encourage artists too to like know your worth, man.
Yeah.
Like don't just go and play for free. Like you
Right
charge
on. That's
be
true.
in venues where people are listening to you, not when you're background noise,
Uh-huh.
like, and I know there's a level of vulnerability in that, but deep down, most of them, that's what they want.
Yeah.
They really do want. I've had lots of conversations with artists, and so I've
Yeah.
been helping to inspire them about picking certain venues where they are valued and being paid well, and
Yep.
like, yeah, set the tone for yourself, man. Value yourself.
That's
What
it.
you have
Well,
is a gift.
yeah. Well, that's the thing that I remember about watching that new Elvis movie that came out. He was just real. He wanted it, but when he got it, it was like, whoa, wait. Am I this? And was trying to kind of evaluate his worth, which is a part of our ego. The number one thing that gets in the way of all of our relationships as human beings and our creative
Mhm.
flow is our own selves, our own egos, our own sense of worth. And if you have a childhood or you have things that happen that didn't necessarily boost you up, that's always going to be a wound that you have to find a way to evolve out of.
That is so true. Great point. I don't get on that stage to get my worth. If
Right.
anything, I'm questioning it a little bit because I'm worried what people think. I do struggle with that still, but I'm pretty secure in who I am based on the work I've done on myself and the healing I went through. And that it really is key. And I think a lot of these artists, they allow themselves to be used because they do get an element of value on what they do. But then when things like COVID hit
Yeah,
or your vocals go out and then you can't perform, it's like, who am I? And they've totally just lost themselves. So
absolutely.
I think the process I've been led through, call it spiritual, whatever, I don't know, but I did a lot of work on myself and art was part of that
Yeah.
process. I didn't need the art to heal, but it did help a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would think one of the more difficult things in your creative life is to write your book and to revisit the halls and chambers of your life that were difficult. How did you get through that? How cathartic was it to actually get through that? And how was it during the time of trying to go through things that you wish you would never remember?
Yeah, great question. It's not easy. It's like walking through a buzzsaw,
Yeah.
really.
Yep.
And I didn't really expect it. I think I was a little naive and thinking these are great stories and people want to hear this,
Yeah.
and it'd be great to have something to sell if I do a show. People aren't buying CDs anymore. So
Right.
like a short book, they could sit down for an hour and read through that has like some pictures.
Yep.
That was my process. And then as I started like writing these short stories, my instincts had me starting from like when I was abandoned, like
Yeah.
starting there. Because this story, it's been like this song has been developing my whole life is what I realize. I
Yeah.
like have goosebumps right now talking about it. But and so capturing those moments, and part of it was when I was like my dad left us and we were homeless for 6 months. Like I share a short story of that, and people really relate to it. So it's kind of good that it's small.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been able to handle any more than that, let alone someone else too. And
Totally.
obviously I go into the second part, which is where I got to go to Nashville and record the song with Kent Wells, Dolly Parton's producer, and how we met and just the interaction him and I had, which was up and down. And, I never saw him as I never pedestalized him.
Yeah.
I saw him as a normal human being, and we did get in some conflicts. And I
Yeah.
talked about that in the book too. But we left as friends, which I thought was cool with a mutual respect. So,
Totally.
starting with being abandoned and then all the way to Nashville, during COVID actually.
Yeah.
And recording that song and getting it out. And I just released the song with the book in October of last year.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's been a
awesome.
been a journey. It's been a
That's
journey.
quite an evolution. So at this point in your life, of everything that you've done and evolved into, everyone has a perception of you. There's all these different pockets: family, friends, colleagues, clients, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you right now? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. Who am I right now? I mean, there's so many layers there. It's like an onion,
Yeah, certainly
Depending on
is.
who I talk to, I like for you, I'm singer-songwriter.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? But I'm a mom, I'm a creative. I love to adventure. I love good food. Um, I love connecting with people. I'm no longer like feel like trauma's holding me back
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm looking forward to this new season and really getting on some bigger stages. I have some
Yeah.
things set up and people have been reaching out to me, which is really cool. And I'm just ready.
Yeah.
Like I just think about like, who are you today? I just think I'm ready. Like
Yeah.
that's
That's great.
I'm still learning that,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a great quote. Yeah. That should be on a coffee cup.
Who
That
are you today? I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Let's
That's
do
it.
this. Yeah.
Right. It can answer anything. So if anyone wants to pick up the book, the music, and
Yeah.
delve further into your world and everything that you're doing, where's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so my website, which is amberlynspeaks.com. And I spell my last or my middle name Lynn, which is one N. So it's
Okay.
Amber Lyn, one N. But yeah, here's I don't know if you can see, I can't see myself on this,
Yes,
but this
I
is my
can.
book.
Yeah. Who did the
So,
art?
so a couple people. I'll have to get you the name. That's so funny. I'm like
I
drawing
like
a
that
now.
style. It's kind of
Yeah,
it's specific, but it's nondescript, and then it just kind of pops out. That's fun. I always
good.
like that style of art.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll shoot you their name. I found
Okay.
them on Upwork. And then I had a book cover artist take his artwork and put it.
Yeah.
So a couple people.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Took a
I love
team.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Everyone came together. Amber Lyn, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. It's wonderful to connect, and best of luck with all of the music. And maybe at some point down the line, when things really start picking up and whatnot, let's revisit. And
Yeah.
I'd love to get your recollection of all of these experiences, because it just
Yeah.
seems like you're on this escalator that's going to a place that you're not sure, but you're in let's go mode. So let's go.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's
Yep.
do
And
it.
yeah, I'd love to next time we'll bring my guitar. Maybe we'll play
Yes.
a song together.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Absolutely.
Good
It's
to meet
great
you
to meet
too.
you. Thank you.